Hey, Bert.
And you are live.
We're live. Thank you very much, Albert. And hello, everyone. And welcome to the Two Blind Mice Show, September 30th edition. I don't think there's more than that. But anyway, first of all, we have been off the air since early August. We were in Seattle. We got back about a week or so ago. We went on an Alaskan cruise. We were hoping to do a show from the cruise ship, but well, the internet wasn't that good, so we couldn't. Tonight, it's going to be me and Albert that are hosting. Mary is not available tonight. She's got an engagement that she needs to go to, and she will be there. She'll probably be saying goodbye as she walks out the door. So it will just be me and Albert and our guests, Lise, Erica, and Linda. And today's topic is going to be about the increasing problem regarding rideshare discrimination against those who, have guide dogs. And the purpose of this discussion is to work towards bringing awareness to the increasing problem. And my plan is to send this recording to our local representatives. Frankly, I'm going to try to send it to every representative in the country. I know that the issues currently, in a way, being addressed through, I think the NFB is part of it, the ACB, the AFB. They're having discussions with Lyft and Uber. But the fact of the matter is they are only going to do so much, at least at this point. And I don't know how anybody feels about it. I don't know how you, as a guide dog user, feel about it. I don't think enough is being done. And I think part of the problem is us. We don't speak up for ourselves. And it's something that we need to start doing because, let's face it, when it comes to government, and Albert and I used to be former, we used to work for city governments. Nothing gets done unless the complaints start snowballing and then somebody starts taking serious what the problem is. And I mean, as an example, the legislation passed recently where, at least for now, government websites need to be fully accessible to the visually impaired. And the only reason that occurs is because people started speaking up and saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, and so forth. Now, the eventual outcome is going to be to make all websites accessible to the visually impaired. So we need to address this issue, okay? So our guest tonight is Linda from Utah, Lise from New York City, and from Buffalo, and Erica from New York City. Am I correct?
Nope, you had it right the first time.
Ah, doggone it.
You flipped us.
That's okay.
Oh, well, I'll punish myself later.
I'll take New York City if Lise can handle the snow.
I do like snow.
Well, you've got a lot of it up here. So
There we go.
What? You guys got snow already?
Oh no, not yet.
Oh,
Don't jinx
soon.
it, Philip. Oh my
She'll
God,
have it
don't
soon.
jinx us.
I was checking the weather conditions earlier today, and I was here in 60 and 70 degrees, and obviously, man, you scared the daylights out of me. I'm from South Texas, guys, and as far south as you can go, in Texas. And today was 91 degrees, and that's cool. Okay.
And it was 90. It was 90 degrees in Utah today, and where I live in Linden.
And what was what your humidity level was?
No,
2.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to ask. I'm asking. Here,
it's too dry here.
Yeah, exactly. Here, it's like 70-80% humidity. So that's why we're used to it. But snow scares me. I like the cold weather. Anyway, okay, we got off topic. Let's go ahead and talk about what we're going to talk about today, and that's rideshare Lyft drivers. I want to start by bringing up how I came across this, and as through Lise. I'm going to get it right, Lise. I'm going to get it right. She put up a YouTube video, and is that a YouTube channel you host?
Yes, it's called Lyrical, like you sing, la, and then Lise is my name. Lis is my channel name. Lyrical
Okay.
Lise.
All right. So I've asked
Put a
Lise to
shameless plug in there.
well, actually, that was the goal.
Thank you.
You did okay. But
Can you,
it
Lise,
caught my
can you
attention
spell
what
that? Lise, can you spell that?
Yeah, Lyrical is Lyrical, and Lise is Lis. It's like Lisa without the A.
Right. So that's what I would look up on YouTube.
Yep. That should find me.
It's all one word. Okay. Thank you.
to our viewers, what I'm going to do as soon as I can get that link from Lise, I'm going to put it up in the comment section and on the page as well. The video that Lise put up, it just really caught my attention because she's pretty much is a compilation of her experiences with rideshare drivers, and just listening to it alone just pretty much frustrated me. And as a future guide dog user, I think this is information that I wanted to address. And what got me, and I spoke to our guest before we went live, is the arrogance behind rideshare drivers. There's a lot, there's a huge lack of compassion. They don't understand the importance of a guide dog. And frankly, a lot of them just don't care and make up excuses left and right as to why they won't let you in the vehicle. The reality is, it is discrimination and it is illegal to do that. And one of the things that I'm going to address on that video before we go any further, because I'm hoping that takes us in the direction what we want to talk about, is I was listening to the video, and when Lise contacted one of the drivers, what he said hit a nerve. He said, I may work for Lyft or Uber, but this is my car. And I'm like, you jerk. But then the cop in me, because I'm a former police officer, so is Albert. We were former, and the first thing that popped into my head was, okay, this is your car. Maybe somebody should create legislation that when a rideshare driver refuses to give somebody a ride, police can be called and issue them a ticket. Now, I know that discrimination against persons with disabilities is a federal violation, but I know that the exceptions can be made through state legislatures to make that a state violation. And I think the only way, in my opinion at least, that any addressing of the discrimination by rideshare drivers is going to be addressed is if they have to face a penalty. And currently, the way I understand it, they don't face much penalties other than having a temporary suspension of their account. Then they go back and do it all over again. And that's a little bit unfair to those who are being discriminated against. So, Lise, we only saw what you put up on that video. Since you've done that video, have you had any other experiences regarding discrimination?
I have found the last couple weeks since I posted that have been a little bit calmer. For a while there, it seemed to be like 1 out of 5 rides, believe it or not, would at least be an argument, if not a denial. I did have one last Tuesday, and that case, the driver said that he wouldn't take a pet. I explained it's a service dog. You know, I'm always very calm. I try to stay calm, explain what the law is, explain that the dog's a service animal. So he did let us ride, but then he took us and wouldn't go to the actual destination. And I kept insisting, you need to go up a couple more blocks, blah, blah, blah. And he just pulled over. And as I said, fine, I'll just walk, because I just didn't want to deal. I was going to be late at that point, and it wasn't worth the confrontation. He said, well, maybe your pet can help you. I was just like, you're such a jerk,
Oh my God.
Now that's kind of extreme.
Yeah.
That was just someone that had kind of a vendetta to pull off. I always video all of my pickups just so I have some evidence. Here in New York City, you can file a complaint with Uber, but you can also file a complaint with the Taxi and Limousine Commission. And I would imagine that at least the big cities have something. So basically someone that's overseeing all of the ride share. And what happens with that, you file a complaint, you agree to show up for a hearing, and that driver has to appear at a hearing, and they can get up to a $1,000 fine. But the most recent contact I got, a follow-up on a hearing, was for a ride that was over a year and a half ago. So
Wow.
the system is super slow. At that point, the driver may not even be driving for Uber. But I have had several that have resulted in the driver receiving that fine. It doesn't put any money in my pocket, because sometimes people are like, "Oh, yay! At least you got $1,000." Like, no, the city got $1,000.
Yeah.
I spent more time because I had to file the complaint. I had to, appear for the hearing. But I do feel like that makes a difference. It's making a statement. So
I agree.
Well, Lise, this is Linda. What was the purpose of him letting you off 3 blocks or so before your destination? Just to be ornery? Is that what
I think so. I mean, I can't read his mind, but it did seem like that. There was a bit of a language barrier, but he can read his GPS regardless of whether he understands my directions. And
So did you file a complaint with Uber on that issue? Because that's another
yes,
issue besides the dog.
yes, no, I did file a complaint on that.
Because that's
And then
unsafe.
Uber's kind of silly, because then they'll give you like, here's your $5 or your
Mhm.
$15. You can't go anywhere for $15. It's like, that's what I'm worth to you. So that gets a little frustrating. But
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
so anyway, that's
I wasn't aware of Uber doing that. That's that's disrespectful. That's no other way of putting it. It's really disrespectful. I think they can just buy you off with a couple of bucks.
now sometimes, like, that's if it's a denial. If they have completed a trip, like in this case, it should come. They'll probably comp the ride. But if it's if you file a complaint that this driver refused to give you a ride, it's usually like, okay, well, we're going to follow up and we're going to investigate and do what's appropriate, but here's $10 to shut you up, kind of thing. It's like,
Yeah,
I don't
I
need
agree.
$10. I need a ride.
No, I get you.
But it's a safety issue to think that he dropped you off somewhere else than what you put on your destination.
Right.
Yeah.
But like I said, that's not a typical kind of dog guide issue that I've experienced. That was just fresh in my brain because it happened most recently. Usually it's I don't take dogs. There's
I have an
the dog.
allergy.
Right, I have an allergy. That's a big one. I have an allergy.
It's my car. I make the rules.
Yep. Exactly. Now
It's a big dog. I don't want you to be uncomfortable. Oh, thank you. No, we're
I
great.
remember that one. All right, Linda, let me ask you: have you ever experienced a denial?
Yes, I've experienced denials, and what has happened is they come. I send them a message and say, I'm blind. I need you to identify yourself as my driver. I won't be able to see you, just so they know that. So you need to identify yourself, and then I don't tell them I have a dog, and then they come and it says car approaching, and then it gets here, and all of a sudden it's a cancel. That's happened on 2 occasions, possibly 3. But I've also had one where they pulled up and they asked me, and they said, why didn't you tell me I had a dog? You had a dog. And I said, well, I don't have to do that. And he said, well, I don't want to just take dogs. And I said, this is a service dog. And we kind of went back and forth for a little bit. And he said, well, I don't want to have to take this. And I said, here, I showed him my certification. I carry it in her harness. And I said, here is my certification. This proves that this is a guide dog. This should relieve your mind that this is a well-behaved dog. And I said, because I'm showing you this, I want you to take me. And he did do it. I don't think he was happy. And then that was that experience. And the other one that happened, which some of you may have experienced that are listening, at the ACB conference on July of 23, we had Uber attending from 4 to 5 p.m. And they were surprised at how many denials they were. And they were surprised that they could get back on the platform. But the thing that happened is the class was over at 5. We all said it was freshen up. We'll go downstairs at 5:30 at outside the hotel, and we're going to call Uber, Lyft, taxis, whatever. There must have been 20 or 30 of us out there. Now, mind you, they have canes and dogs, but one by one, cancel, cancel, cancel. I heard over 10 cancellations. And I know there were more because people said, oh, they just canceled. They didn't know whether they were picking up somebody with a white cane or with a dog. They just canceled. And I thought how ironic that is that we were just attending an Uber class.
Wow. When was this?
This was the ACB convention in last year in 2023 in Schaumburg. And I contacted Chris afterwards and said, next year when you come, you need to plan on staying and be downstairs with us in front of the hotel. Now, they weren't here this past year in July that I'm aware of, unless I missed a class. But I said, you need to be down at the hotel, schedule your class from 4 to 5, and then be down at the front doors. I said, you will be shocked. And
that might not be a bad thing for Uber we need to invite Uber reps to a day in the life with a guide dog user. They have to go where we go and see the nonsense.
well, okay, great. I'm glad you brought that up, Erica. And Erica, let me ask you a quick question. Are you sighted?
Are you talking to me, Philip? Erica?
Erica.
Yes, Erica from Buffalo.
That was Lise that commented, but now Erica's
I'm sorry. Well, you guys.
Now Erica's going to speak.
I'm so sorry. Well, let me ask you, Erica. Now, who are you associated with?
So I work for the Institute on Disability Awareness at Niagara University, and I'm also the chair of the Committee on Disabilities here in the town of Amherst in Buffalo, New York. And I am a guide dog user. I'm on my second dog right now. I have Fozzie, and he is from Leader Dogs.
Oh, Zillie's from Leader Dog too.
Excellent.
My Brooke is from Guide Dogs for the Blind in California.
Nice.
Okay, Fozzie, like in Fozzie the bear from the
Fozzie
movie.
the bear.
Fozzie the bear, yeah. Fozzie is a German Shepherd Lab cross, so a big black dog.
Nice.
You might have an idea as to what I'm picturing right now. Does he wear a hat?
No, that's a really good idea. We should do that. Not that we don't have enough problems with access issues and everything, right?
We'll just draw a little more attention.
Exactly.
Now, in New York, and I'm asking this because, like I said, I'm going to reach out to as many representatives that I can reach out to. Do you know more or less how the laws are when it comes to denying accessibility to guide dog users, not just rideshare, but in general?
Yes. So here in New York, and I don't have the specifics off the top of my head, I'd have to pull it up again. But I do know, like, I get where you're going with this. In some places, it is a criminal offense to deny access to a guide dog user, and then in other states, it's a civil offense. The problem, though, is getting the local law enforcement to enforce, even if it is criminal. And I'll give you a good example because off the top of my head, I do know in New York State, we have service animal protection laws. So if someone's pet were to interfere with my guide while he's working, I can theoretically, in a perfect world, call my local law enforcement and request that charges are pressed against the owner of the pet that's just interfered with my dog. However, good luck not only explaining that to police because they're very quick to cite, it's all civil regardless of what's happening, or, and B, impressing upon them the seriousness of the issue, and that, it should be a matter that's pursued. I hear a lot of people locally, a lot of disabled guide dog users, they'll have an access issue, and the police will show up and they'll say, well, you've been trespassed and I can trespass you. They can ask you to leave for any reason they want. And, my answer to that is always, well, not based on protected class status. If there's, you're causing a ruckus or you're inappropriate in the business, that's one thing. But just because you're a person protected class status and you're trying to access any sort of public accommodation, it's not up to the establishment to decide they don't want you to be there simply because you fall under that, minority status. That's not permissible. So I think we have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, there is. Like I said, I'm a former police officer, and when it came to accessible parking violations, I was zero tolerant. I always gave a ticket because the morality or the lack of morality behind doing that to someone is just, I don't know, I call it despicable. And it used to bother me quite a bit. So I was zero tolerant when it came to that situation. However, on the flip side, several years ago, when I was living at an apartment complex, came home and the accessible parking slot was taken by someone with no credentials on the vehicle. So I called the local police, and this is a police department that I used to work with. And he showed up, he found the driver, and I heard the conversation where he told her she needed to move the car, and her response was, I will as soon as I'm done talking to my friend. He said, okay, turned around and left. And I'm like, as a former cop, I was like, I wish you were my subordinate. As a person with a disability, I was infuriated. So the story doesn't end there. So I said, you know what? I'm not going to deal with this way. So I sent a letter to the chief of police explaining what happened. And he referred me to the third in command of the department. And she called me up and wanted to hear what happened. I told her, just like my letter said, this is what happened. She said, well, in order for us to start an investigation, you need to come down to this department and file a complaint. And me being me, I said, Commander, I'm a former supervisor just like you are. And you've explained to me why the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And she asked, what do you mean, sir? You just ask a disabled person to go to where you are, an able-bodied person to pursue a complaint. Can you give me a legitimate reason why you cannot come down to where I am? Dead silence. I said, don't trouble yourself because I know what the problem is and you're part of it. You have a good day. And it was frustrating to know that our law enforcement officers out there do not enforce this. Now, a devil's advocate is under rule or under law, they're not required to issue citations. Citations are discretionary. And you're not going to be able to change that no matter how hard you try. That's the way it's always going to be. And that's a problem with it. Now, looking at it on a national level, that's where the Department of Justice comes in to do the enforcement. And as we spoke earlier, it's time that the disabled community started speaking up as a whole to the Department of Justice, because that's the only way they're going to hear it. If 5 or 10 people file a complaint per month, they're not going to care. But if you have 5 or 10 people file a complaint every 2-3 minutes, they're going to start paying attention. And unfortunately, there's so many of us in the disabled community who feel that they're at the end of the rope and nothing's going to be done. And sadly, in many cases, that is the outcome. But I think it's time that we all started needing to speak up, not only for guide dog users, but anyone with vision loss or anyone with a disability. And I take it personal. I'm a person with vision loss. I was also a member of the law enforcement community. And when I see my quote unquote brothers and sisters in blue not doing what should be done, it infuriates me. We took an oath and it should be honored, and it's not being honored. The same thing goes for the Department of Justice. The same thing goes for our congressional and Senate representatives. I mean, the list goes on, and nobody's doing anything. And what surprises me the most is I recently started looking into countries around the world as to how accessibility is addressed over there. And my surprise was at least 10 countries are not only more accessible than the United States. When a violation occurs, they address it immediately in whatever form that they come across. And that's what needs to be done here in the US, and it's not being done. In the meantime, you get situations where you're being dropped off 2 blocks from your location, out in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. going home. You can't go home because nobody wants to give you a ride because of your dog. We mentioned the safety issue. Well, yeah, it's a safety issue. But on the flip side, it's a liability issue for Uber, Lyft, and the driver. Because if something is to happen to me because they refuse me service, I'm not going to stop at just the complaining part. If I can seek legal representation, I am, and I will address the issue in that way. I'm sorry, when it comes to advocacy, I'm a big mouth. I don't stay quiet. I address it. And my wife, Mary, knows this, which she's walking right by now. Say hi, honey.
Hi, I gotta go.
She's got to go. She got to marry the other half of the Two Blind Mice show. So she had an appointment, so she couldn't be here. Anyway, but I don't keep quiet. And it just bothers me that so many people with discrimination cases stay quiet. And I think it's time that we started opening doors to start getting those addressed. I don't know how anybody feels about this. And let's start with you, Lise. What do you think of it?
Well, we definitely have to advocate for ourselves because no one else may. I mean, we're our number one cheerleader. I do know that anytime I've filed a complaint, like I told you, I filed with Uber. I actually am not a Lyft user. I don't have a problem with Lyft. They may be awesome. I don't know. I'm just always use Uber. Maybe I should try Lyft since Uber is being difficult.
This is Linda. I find that Lyft does work better than Uber. I prefer Lyft for that reason.
Well, maybe I should take my money there.
They're easier to communicate with. And for that's a big issue too, because Uber, all you get are form questions and form answers, and they hardly ever address the actual complaint or question that you have, because everything is a form. Same answer for different complaints. Yeah. But Lyft is a little better, and you do know that both Lyft and Uber both have dedicated phone numbers for denials.
Lyft does.
Uber and Lyft.
When did Uber get a dedicated phone number?
I didn't know Uber had one.
Yeah, Uber got rid of it.
They got rid of it?
Yeah, they kept it after the lawsuit. They kept it for the agreed upon amount of time after the lawsuit, and then they did away with it. You could only file the access issue for service animal denial through the app now, which is part of the reason why I only use Lyft, is because there's a phone number still you can call. Lyft kept their phone number.
And some of those options
at the ACB in 2023, they gave us a number, and I have it in my phone. But I don't think I can get into my contacts while I'm on this call, or I'll get disconnected.
I wonder if that's a general, like, health and safety complaint number.
No, because I called the health and safety complaint number when when a driver went in another direction than one I wanted him to go. And I told him not to go that way. And it was out of the way, and it was a darker area, and so it made me uncomfortable. And he had to turn around and go back. So I called and complained about that, and I used it as a safety issue, and they were very limited on what they considered safety issues. I was really surprised.
I'll tell you what, let me give you some homework, Linda. After the show or sometime tomorrow, if you can send me that number, that way I can put it up also on the page and share with everybody else.
But Lyft has one, and as far as I know, I mean, they gave it to us in 2023, and so
that would be wonderful if they set up a new number.
Yeah, okay. I'm not aware of that. So if you have it, that'd be awesome. And it's interesting because you're talking about the forms on the app for Uber. It used to be very accessible, and now with a recent update, it's kind of disturbing because some of the options just say full moon or something, like it's probably an icon or whatever. So I just like randomly, I've memorized where certain things are, but that's a whole different that's a whole
Well,
different show.
Yes,
But
that I agree with you. Their app is inconsistent with the screen reader.
yeah, it'll get caught up like on the next update probably, but right now it's out of compliance.
The other issue with corresponding with either of these platforms is that 99% of the time you're speaking either in writing or on the phone with someone whose English is not their native language. So that's also, a source of frustration, because they're just kind of, copy pasting or clicking these canned responses. We are so sorry this happened. We value all of our customers. We
Right,
love all
right.
our riders. We're so
Right,
sorry
right.
you were you were aggrieved, and it's like, no, I was discriminated against. Let's use the word that's relevant here.
We
So
don't
that's the
want
other
to
part of the issue.
inconvenience you, so here's your
Exactly.
$10.
And it'd be
Well,
like, my billable hour is 120 an hour, and I've spent 45 minutes dealing with you people, in addition to the time I had to wait to get another ride. So let's start there.
Well, and I get similar canned responses from the Department of Justice, which Phil was saying, we need to be complaining there. Every time I file a formal complaint with the rideshare, I file it there, and I get the same response every time due to our volume of cases. We have chosen to not pursue this. Now, I'm not quoting that. I'm not looking at it, but that's the concept. That's my paraphrase of what it is said over and over again. But I keep filing because it's the right thing to do. But I've not seen any action come of any of those complaints.
Yeah, and unfortunately, there's not going to come any action out of it until the blind community just starts speaking up for itself.
And the access has not just gotten worse with rideshare. I'll show how old I am, but I got my first dog when I got out of high school in 1985. So I've had dogs for a long time. I'm on my 5th dog, and they all worked full careers. I'm old. But I never, it was very unusual to get an access issue. Maybe kind of in a less populated area, you might go in like a mom and pop shop. Certain culture restaurants would have a little bit of issue with the dog, but it happens a lot of places now: hotels, restaurants, stores, rideshare, and it's a constant challenge. And it's really coming out of the fact that people are posing their pets as service animals, and they take their animals into these places, and the proprietors have negative experiences with those dogs. They bark, they're aggressive, they pee, they sniff stuff, whatever happens. So now people are skeptical of any dog coming in. So they're the culprits, really, are the people that are bringing the fake service dogs.
I do not call my dog a service dog. I call her a guide dog. And so when someone says, we don't want service dogs in here, I say, this is a guide dog. This assists me seeing. This is not a typical service dog that you're used to seeing.
Well, one of the things that I'm working on here in Texas is that issue that you just mentioned, because of the denial of legitimate guide dogs based on the abuse by so-called service dog owners. And if you have ever had a driver's license, you remember the endorsements that come with it that are usually printed on the back of the driver's license, saying like you wear
glasses,
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things that I'm hoping and I'm working towards doing here in Texas is to do the same. You know how you have to go through a process to get a accessible parking placard. Same process to certify your dog as a guide dog, a legitimate guide dog or a legitimate service dog, whatever they decide, where you present your ID card to the proprietor and you show them the endorsement on the back that says that your dog is a legitimate guide dog. All right. Now, let's face it, they're not going to jump and say, oh, please come on in. So in attachment with that, I'm working towards having them propose legislation that if they violate the right to go in there with that dog as endorsed by the ID card, they have to pay a fine. And again, it comes down just to the same thing as rideshare drivers. Until property owners, vehicle owners start facing the pinch of what happens when you violate somebody's civil rights, in this case, disability discrimination, nothing's going to be done. And I'm about 95% sure that until that happens, we're going to be dealing with this issue for decades to come, because nobody's actually really being punished for this. And
Well, and I think it's
Well,
I think it's a burden on the proprietors too, because not everybody's disability is visible, and there are people who have legitimate, well trained for the purpose of their disability, and some, like, that's hard because they're almost afraid to challenge some people, and that's why some of these pets are coming in and being stupid.
yeah, I
you know, so
agree.
it's I know that's kind of the other side of the issue, but I kind of get it a little bit, but that doesn't make it okay, if that
Well,
makes sense.
but guide dogs have, Phil, you don't have one yet, but guide dogs, we get a certified card that we can carry in our wallets. And that says they are certified dogs. So that there's proof right there that this has taken place. And I would
Okay.
think if another legitimate, an epileptic dog, a blood clot dog, or some of these others, I would imagine that they have some type of certification to prove that that's what type of service those dogs have. And I think we've kind of kicked ourselves in the rear end because people have made an issue of not having to show this certification. They're offended by having to show it. Well, you get stopped by police when you drive, you got to show your driver's license. And so now they can't even ask for the certification. And so it does more damage both ways. They can't ask for certification, and so we can't prove that we have a genuine, well-trained dog, and so they let these other ones in and they messed it up for all of us.
They did. And the thing is, there is a way to address that. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but when you apply for a driver's license, if you've ever had one, if you read the fine print before you sign, it says on there that you agree to present your driver's license upon request of a state peace officer. It's not whether you want to or not, is that you have to. Okay. A similar disclaimer could be put where a business asks for your ID card with the endorsement, you are required to present it. And if it is legitimate and the business owner sees it as legitimate, the rideshare driver sees it legitimate, by law, they have to accept it as a legitimate guide dog. And that's it. We're covered. Now, I have had this discussion with other visually impaired people all over Facebook. And what really got to me was the attitude of some people saying what you just mentioned. I don't believe I should have to. Okay.
See, that's just a prideful, you're making a nuisance of yourself
Well,
attitude.
here's the thing. When I brought up the issue, I asked, do you have an accessible parking placard or license plate on your vehicle? And a few of them answered yes. What's the difference between doing the same thing for an endorsement on your back of your ID card? And that pretty much ended the discussion. But
If I can speak to that's a prideful thing. I have been in the camp of I'm not required to show that, and I'll explain why. People can go online and they get fake IDs and they have these fake certifications, and because the law says that it's not required, they're like the first ones to be like, no, look, I've got my vest, I've got my card. And I'm not talking about what you're saying, because, I have a leader dog card, but I feel like they've polluted that water as well in that way, because it's not a legitimate certificate. So by saying you're not required to show it, that's actually what the law says. No, look, here's my card. is what the fakers are doing. So I've been worried about reinforcing the fakers' falsehood that it's required. So I understand why you show it. I'm not trying to challenge your approach.
And that is why I think it should be state mandated. It's one thing to carry a piece of paper and say it because people can just dismiss it, but they cannot dismiss a state approved ID card that shows that your dog is a legitimate guide dog or face consequences. And I can guarantee you that will fix the problem of fake service animals. It will. I have no doubt about it, because they're going to realize they're not taking these anymore because the state requires an ID card. And that's one of the things that I'm working towards doing here in Texas. I'm hoping it happens, but let's face it, I can't do this on my own. And the visually impaired community in Texas is not really straightforward and not been ready to jump on the bandwagon and help me out. And that's what's happening nationwide is we don't stand up for ourselves. And it's time that we do start standing up for ourselves. I mean, look at what happened as a great example of it. Look at what happened with audio description. That was non-existent, 10 years ago, 15 years ago? But then the community, and then when it started, it was very minimal. But then the word got out, everybody started speaking up about it, and you get audio description on almost every program now. And that's the attitude we should have. If we want to have shows audio described, then we should also be as very active for that as we are for legitimizing guide dogs. And we need to do that. We need to speak up against the discrimination against us. And we've mentioned earlier about having to address the DOJ over and over and over and over again, because eventually they're going to get tired of it. They're going to realize this is a wave and we need to address it. And it's not going to happen overnight. Let's face it, our government is not a very reliable government that we have. But it doesn't mean we stop trying. And we need to continue trying this, even at the local level. I mean, there's a possibility that a city can enact an ordinance saying that you cannot deny, your someone with a guide dog a ride share. If you do, you lose your permit completely, because we're not going to let you operate within the city limits of our town. There's a lot of options out there, but it's not going to happen until we start acting on this. And we have different levels to address. And I do believe it's time to do so, because I've called it an epidemic. And I think we're getting to that point, because like I said, like you guys know, I don't have a dog. And this conversation is a learning experience for me as to what I'm looking forward to, over in the next few months, starting the next couple of months. And I'm like, do I really want a guide dog? Well, yes, I do. Because why? Because if I say I don't want a guide dog because of all the problems, that I'm being part of the problem myself.
Well, and the sad thing is there's people who have dogs now that are thinking about giving them up, or I won't get another one. And that's sad. Or people that just aren't going out as much. And I mean, that's horrid. If somebody feels like they can't live their life, they can't be active in the community because somebody denies them a ride to get where they need to go, and they may not have another option of how to get there. I tell people, keep living your life. Don't let this get you down. Just keep working at it. Keep your head up.
I'm just wondering, maybe you can answer this one, Erica, is to your knowledge. Yeah, actually, it's going to be for the three of you, but to your knowledge, Erica, do you know if either Lyft or Uber require their drivers to take some training before they become drivers when it comes to addressing accessibility issues?
Yes, they both do. Both platforms do have mandated training, and both platforms have periodic reminders that they have something that pops up on the screen, or they have one of the platforms has a video of a woman giving a brief educational, in service about your responsibilities as a driver. But, how many of us, sighted, visually impaired, what have you, just scroll through to the bottom and click I agree and move on with our day? So just because this is being presented to them does not mean they're reading it, watching it, listening to it, comprehending it. They're just signing up to make the money and go about their day. The other issue, which specifically here in Buffalo, I just had an issue with Lyft this morning. 11:30 this morning, I had an issue with a driver. I'm arguing at the curb about Lyft policy, and this is not a pet. because they pull up and go, I don't take the dog. And I go, yes, you do take the dog. And here we go. Commence, here we go. My day job is educating, and now I'm educating at the curb too. But the other part of this is that specifically here in my community, a lot of these drivers, again, they're non-native English speakers. And when I spoke with the attorneys from the U.S. Department of Justice who are spearheading this, this investigation into this epidemic that's going on right now, one of the things that we discussed was perhaps what we should be focusing on is when we're educating, when Lyft and Uber, when they're educating these drivers, that they're educating them in their native language. Additionally, we have a cultural divide as well. So you have someone, English is not their first language. They're from a country where the concept of a dog that can do what our dogs do for us is so far beyond anything they've ever dreamed. I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten into a car and the driver is panicked. The dog's going to lay down. Their mouth is going to be closed. Their head's going to be out the window. I mean, they're very nervous. And I'm trying to make sure, I'm a woman, I'm a rather tiny woman, and I'm in a vulnerable situation as it is. I'm in the back of a stranger's vehicle with my dog. I need to ensure my safety, my dog's safety. And can you focus on the road if you're worried about what the dog's doing in the back of the floor here? So
Especially
yes,
if they don't speak English, that's another layer of safety.
It is. It really is. And I want to just, I want to briefly touch on, because I didn't say anything about, my thoughts on the certification yet. And my opinion is that ID and certification is not going to effectively solve the issue. When we are educating out in the community, one of the things that we're explaining to businesses through my day job and advocacy is that your number, a big red flag should be going off if someone is pulling out any sort of card or an ID. And I do know that specifically within the guide dog programs, handlers, they're given these cards. And I do know that there are a lot of handlers who rely on them, and that's their choice. But I think if we're thinking long term, first, we can have fraudulent sellers who are replicating and falsifying IDs. Second, we have these programs very widely in terms of their training methods, and there really is no standardized certification. All that card really means is that the dog came from that school and you completed your 2 or your 3 week training together. And the other issue is that requiring these cards or certification, it's excluding people with disabilities who are training their own dogs, some who do that very, very well. And that's perfectly legal under the ADA. And finally, I really think the bottom line is that this enforcement needs to focus on behavior and not paperwork. And the issue in general is that these places are afraid to enforce anything at all because they're worried about getting sued. And that, I think, is the bottom line. And we've spent so much time trying to educate people. You can't ask for a vest. You can't ask for ID. You can't ask if, what my disability is. And to now turn around and say, oh, but you can ask for something here, there, or wherever, I think we end up shooting ourselves in the foot. And, I think we have to be very careful when we have, thinking about this too. You go up to Canada, certain provinces do require ID for public access. And those handlers will tell you it doesn't make a lick of difference. They still walk in, they show their ID if they're asked to, and they're still getting kicked out. And the word arrogant has been brought up a couple of times here. And I would say that that's also something that I've experienced. You walk in, if that person is dead set on, I don't want you here, I don't want your dog here, and I'm right and you're wrong, and there's nothing you can do about it, that's the way it's going to be. I had a medical provider who refused access to my first dog because, get this, they brought their pet to the office every day. So they said there's only room for one dog in this building, and that's mine. And I said, oh, really? So that was an expensive lesson for that medical provider because I don't play. But we have to think about, instead of working towards an idea what we think might be an idealized way of handling the problem. I think instead we need to be focused on getting more education out. And I do believe when people are pulling out IDs and they're presenting IDs, even if they're legitimate, I think it does a disservice to other handlers, because then businesses are expecting this. Well, how come they had a card and you don't have a card? And, I've never been asked for an ID. I've never been asked for proof, not even with my first dog. So I've been very lucky. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's how my dogs have carried themselves. But I really think that we need to be educating businesses about the behavior. Look at the behavior. And if the dog is behaved and it looks like it's focused and doing its job, I don't really care if the dog is in there or not. But if the dog is wild and barking and lunging, I went down the refrigerated section of a Whole Foods a couple months ago and something's barking at me. Fozzie, find the counter up to, where's your manager? Why is there a dog barking at me in front of the milk? Like, what is going on? And it turned out there's someone in there. They're wearing a dog and a backpack on their chest, walking around shopping at a Whole Foods. But you know what? Kudos to the manager, because he went up, asked the 2 legal questions. Is that a service dog? What tasks has it been trained to do? They said, well, I'm visiting from Scandinavia. I didn't know dogs weren't allowed in the grocery store. And then they quickly escorted them out the other exits. So, right? Like, we win some, we lose some. But those are my thoughts on certification, for whatever it's worth.
Well, you left me speechless.
That's how I feel, that she said it much more articulately than I did. So yay!
This is my day job. This is what I do. I'll get paid to talk about this.
I do agree that education needs to be addressed. A couple of months ago, I was invited to speak at one of the local universities here about accessibility and technology. This was at a blind technology camp for high school, junior high and high school students. And this is how bad the lack of education is. 90% of the students that were there don't even know how to use voiceover.
Wow.
And I was that was my inside response to it. But
that would have been my outside response.
I know. I almost did. But it's a whole picture.
Sorry.
It's a whole picture of it all is the way, if that's just, just a small portion of it, then 90% of the community out there needs to be taught about what accessibility is when it comes to a person with the vision loss. Yeah. And I'm trying to do that here in the region where I live. I live in a 4-county region, population of about 2 million people, and it's an uphill battle. Mm-hmm. And that invitation that I accepted painted a very clear picture as to what needs to be taught, both for the sighted and the visually impaired, as to what accessibility is. And that's a big concern. I think you're right. I think we need to start from there. One of my guests that's coming up on October the 14th, I'll announce it in just a bit, works towards doing that. And I'll get there in a bit. Before that, let's go ahead and get ready to close out. Let me start by asking, Erica, you mentioned that you're talking to a couple of attorneys. Is there any way you can ask them if they're willing to come on the show, or give me their contact information so I can ask if they're willing to come on the show? Because I would like to get a legal perspective regarding the rideshare issue.
I'm not sure if they would be able to come on the show to talk about their work, because they do work for the U.S. Department of Justice. Yeah. I would suggest also reaching out to like Disability Rights Texas and seeing if there are any attorneys there who would be willing. But I can also share the attorney information, the attorneys that I spoke with at the DOJ who are investigating, the rideshare issue too, if anyone would like to reach out just, for an interview or to share their experiences with rideshare. They asked me for videos. I sent them, videos, because I've got tons of video recordings of, the rideshare issues similar to the ones Lisa's collected too. I mean, we could have a little documentary here, Netflix special here on,
right. That what I posted was just a little piece of what I have. So it's ridiculous.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My favorite denial ever was, your dog cannot get in this car because I have an open head wound and he might crawl up into the front seat and lick it while I'm driving. And I went,
Wow.
should you be driving? Do I need to call an ambulance? I mean, like, just, it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible. You can't make this stuff up. You really can't.
No, you can't. All right, let's go ahead and close out. Let me close out by getting a couple of final remarks from you. Let me start with Linda. Now, Linda and I, we actually met in on the cruise ship. We were traveling up to Alaska, so I haven't known Linda that long, but I know she does have a dog because it kept slapping my pants as we were eating dinner, and I've took me about 10 seconds to realize
With her tail,
with her tail, and like. And I know guide dogs can be pretty big, and she sure felt like a big dog because she had a big tail. So, Linda, feel free to give a couple of closing remarks if you like, and then I'm going to go over to Lise and Erica. And Lise, I hope I get your name right.
Well, I think that I know that this podcast this evening has been very valuable to people that are listening out there and to us as well. I just feel that there were topics that were discussed that I hadn't thought about, that I personally hadn't been aware of. And so I appreciate some more information, because that's what it all is. Information and education, whether we're doing it with someone else or whether we are being better educated. And I enjoy that when I get to see a child who says, Mom, can I pet that dog? And they say, no, don't touch. And then I ask the parent, would it be all right if I explained to her why right now she can't pet the dog, or, he, and, that's an example right there that's going to open up that child's world to the importance of guide dogs. And I have a fun story. I don't want to take the time now, but I have a wonderful story about how that reciprocated and came back as a wonderful, wonderful experience. But so it's education all the way around. So thank you all for your comments. I appreciate this opportunity, and I would like to keep in touch and learn more of how I could better advocate. I don't have a job doing that, but it's an interest. I'm retired, and it is something that I have always been interested in doing. So thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Linda. Lise, your turn, but remind us of your YouTube channel.
Okay. Well, I was going to follow up with what she was talking about, where the parent tells the child, no, don't pet that dog. I've had many experiences where the parent is like, oh, hello. And the kid's like, Mom, you can't touch that dog. So the younger generation sometimes knows a little bit more about protocol and etiquette than the older. So my YouTube channel is Lyrical, Lyrical, Lise. I'm probably like a lot of YouTubers that during the pandemic, we were looking for an outlet. We were confined, and everything was remote. So I made a channel. There's all kinds of stuff on there. There's a lot of leader dog stuff, but there's some singing and technology. There's all kinds of stuff. So if you find a video that's weird, just keep clicking. There might be something that connects. But that's where the dog guide video will be. And we just need to keep these forums going. We need to keep the word out. Many of my sighted friends are just shocked when they hear about this, because they're like, no, what about ADA? It's like, yeah, what about it?
Yeah.
So, but thanks for having me today. I'm so glad to be here. And it's a great show. This is fun.
Thank you. I really do appreciate that. And Erica.
Yeah, kudos to everyone here tonight. This is how we do it: raise awareness and push for better education and advocacy. And that's how we're going to make sure that as handlers, we're able to navigate the public with dignity and independence, which is what it's all about. I do want to stress the importance for just, any of our listeners, blind or sighted, seek out local resources, disability committees, local advocacy advocacy groups. This is how we can strengthen our efforts by providing, community-based support, legal guidance, direct action, because your local organizations are going to have a deeper understanding of not only regional laws that can help us as handlers to navigate challenges more effectively, but they can also help to ensure that your local communities and your access to those public spaces are guaranteed as well. So thanks so much, everyone.
I have one more comment. This is Linda, if you don't mind. I would like to put into this conversation the crosswalk issue. How many drivers pull right out in front of us with our guide dogs? I mean, it's just unbelievable how close they are, and their attitude, I'm guessing, is they're always in a hurry, and I can just get through there. It is illegal, at least in our state, to even cross the crosswalk in a vehicle when someone is in the crosswalk. And it happened last week with my home visit from my guide dog school. A big pickup truck went right in front of me. Fortunately, there was a police officer right there. And that police officer came and asked us how we were doing. And I told him it was very scary. And he said, that scared me. Just watching it happen scared me. And I'm just glad that maybe that person is going to pass it along of how important it is to be mindful when people are in crosswalks, because they see the green light from a distance, especially in that right-hand lane. I do not cross the street going in the direction of the traffic, but they see that green light from a distance and they just come up to the green light and make a turn, and here you are in the crosswalk. I don't even think they look for a pedestrian. So that's another issue that needs to be discussed. So
there's another show. There's a show for the future.
That's right.
I'm glad you brought that up. First of all, I want to thank all three of you for coming on the show. I hope we can do this again in the future. But I am going to reach out to anybody who's watching this. If you want to be part of the discussion, feel free to email me. We can schedule another show with you. Just contact us at show.tbms@outlook.com, and we can set up a scheduled program. We need many people to start addressing this concern, especially the rideshare issue, because I think it's long past time to do so. So if you want to be part of this, again, just email us and we'll be able to help you out. A couple of quick announcements. On October the 14th, I'm going to be in New York City over at Guiding Eyes. So I'm going to be doing the show from there. And unless I'm mistaken, Mary's going to be doing the show from here in Texas. And by the way, she is also going through the application process for a guide dog, just waiting for her response. And in that show, we're going to have Kurt Dykman from First Aid for the Blind coming on. And the reason he caught my attention was, and I think all of us may have experienced this, when you first were prescribed with irreversible vision loss, your eye doctor or eye professional had no idea what resources were available for you. And that seems to be the case pretty much in every eye professional's office. So that's what caught my attention as to what he does. So we're going to be discussing that, plus his what he does with First Aid for the Blind. We'll be talking on that October 14th, 8 p.m. Central Time, actually 9 p.m. Eastern Time for me. And we'll be talking about that. Just a quick reminder, guys, we are doing our best to promote, whether brick and mortar or online businesses that are owned and operated by visually impaired business owners, to come on our show. We'll be more than happy to promote your business on here. There's a hope to do it multiple times before the holiday season ends. So reach out to us again at show.tbms@outlook.com. In case you haven't put two and two together, TBMS stands for Two Blind Mice Show. Again, the same thing goes for you guys. If you know somebody that wants to promote their business, have them reach out to me. We'd be more than happy to do so. We're willing to do more than just a show every 2 weeks for that, because we really want to promote businesses that are owned by the blind community. We really want to do that. Other than that, I think we're done. I hope we can do another show. I hope we have other people reach out to us. I hope they can share their stories with us, and let's work together to try to get this thing going. Again, Lisa, if you can send me that link to that specific video, I'd appreciate it. Erica, again, if you could see if you can give me that information for those attorneys, maybe we can connect. And Linda, if you could do me a favor and send me the number for, was it Lyft or Uber?
Yes, both of them.
Yeah, I'd like to put that up on the page as well so people can have access to that information. So everybody, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. I liked the discussion. For me, it was a learning experience as well. Considering that I'm the host, I was kind of surprised. But it was great, guys. I really did enjoy the discussion. I hope we can do it again. So you all have a good night. Feel free to sign off if you want to. I'm waiting for Albert. Albert, are you still there?
Nope, I took a nap.
Oh, wake up, Albert.
Before I forget, it's very important, you guys. October the 2nd is my birthday, so everybody reach out and send me happy birthday wishes on October the 2nd.
Who are
Happy
you?
early birthday.
Yeah.
So don't worry.
Tomorrow.
They'll take me to go eat nothing but cake.
Inside joke, everybody. Send us home, Albert.
Bye.
Bye.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And are we still live?